Welcome back to the channel, everybody. So as you saw in the last video, we got this thing running. It's almost ready to drive, but I have one very important thing left to do, and that is at least paint the underside of this cab. So we put the whole floor in, it's all still bare metal under there. We got to get something on it so it doesn't just rust away to nothing. So that means taking everything out. So that's what we have to do. So stay tuned. Alright, so super excited. I'd love to drive this thing right now, but like I said, we got to do some painting. Can't do all this work and leave the underside unpainted to rust away. If I wait to do it later, it's just going to make it even harder. So that's what we got to do. So basically, we have to yank everything out of here so that we can remove the cab and paint the underside of it. And we got a couple other little things we got to do while that's out. And but we're going to make it happen. So I'm going to start out by yanking the motor out. I don't know that I've yanked the motor out with all of the trans tunnel in and everything like that. It obviously shouldn't be hard because I made the trans tunnel huge. But we're going to go ahead and get that taken care of and get the motor pulled. It's kind of funny, I just started it to with the fuel pump unplugged to try to run the rest of the fuel out of the lines, but I guess the lines are so big, there's just an insane amount of fuel in there. So it ran for a good 30 seconds and still didn't want to die, so I had to shut it off because I didn't want the exhaust to get too hot. So yeah, but anyway, I'm going to start breaking it down. I'm going to take everything off. We got to take the turbos off. We got to take the front half of the my turbo manifolds off. We got to take these ends off. We got to take turbo off. We need to take the intake manifold off. And yeah, so I'm going to get started on breaking some of that stuff down, and we'll see how long it takes me to get it out. Believe it or not, the engine is ready to be pulled with the transmission attached, but I forgot one crucial thing, so I'm going to have to go get that and come on back. But, I mean, this is it. That's all I had to take off. Front grille, front lower valance thing, turbos, exhaust, alternator, intake. That was it. Remove a bunch of wiring. Luckily, our interior is still half done here, so I was able to get the transmission wiring off very easy and the bolts out of the transmission through that opening right there. So obviously we'd have to climb underneath the car if those pieces were on, but that was so easy I'm thinking about making those removable too. So yeah, that's it. It's ready to be pulled. Like I said, I forgot one crucial thing, so I'm gonna go get that. All right, I'm back, and this is what I bought. A little engine leveler, so obviously it's going to make it a heck of a lot easier to pull this thing out. Last time I pulled it out, the chains were kind of janky and it was hard to get out. yeah, half the work's done. Ignore that large pool of oil. I didn't really, realize how much oil was going to come out of my turbo feed lines when I took that off. So yeah, now we know for next time. But that was another 25 minutes. So it took me about less than an hour and a half to pull the motor back out, which is nice. Obviously, if we have track day problems in the future, a spare motor will only take, a couple hours to put back in. So that's good. What we have to do now, whew, so crazy this look. Haven't seen it without a motor in it in so long. So what we have to do now is basically remove everything else. So I'm just going to go ahead and start taking stuff off because we have to remove this entire cab. Oh God, it's like a bad nightmare. The entire cab is off the frame. It is sitting here with pretty much nothing in it except for the brake pedal assembly, which I was not taking out again. Or I might, I don't know. But yeah. Whew. It's a lot of work. But I don't know, it couldn't have took me that long. Maybe 3.5 hours, 4 hours to strip the entire thing down to pretty much absolutely nothing. And get it off the cab and onto some jack stands. So, we made pretty good time. But we're basically all set to start prepping the bottom and painting. So, first thing I'm going to have to do is obviously sand everything. And then we're going to hit it with self-etching primer because it's mostly bare metal. And then we're going to seam seal every single edge in there. And then we're going to lay some primer on top of it probably, and some kind of undercoating, I don't know, on the bottom. I'm probably going to go ahead and paint in the cab and the firewall since I have all the stuff taken out. Alright, so I've been busting my ass. I haven't really been filming that much because, what I'm doing isn't really that interesting. I mean, I guess nothing I'm doing is really that interesting, but at any rate, so I figured this was a good point to give you an update because I'm kind of in all stages of what I've been doing. So here's my firewall area. So basically what I did was grinded everything down that I wanted to grind down. Did an okay job. Then I cleaned everything again, cleaned everything again, cleaned everything again. Laid down self-etching primer on all the bare metal, which is the greenish primer you see here. Once I got everything primed and it dried up, then I went ahead and put seam sealer on just about every seam that I welded, or anything that could have a pinhole in it, or anything like that that would allow moisture into the cab or under the paint or anything like that. So you can see I sealed all of the edges we welded a long time ago. I sealed all the edges on the firewall where the panels are welded together. I seam sealed these edges where this top meets the bottom and everything like that. And most of this stuff got primered underneath of where these panels bonded to. So, it worked out. So that's where I'm at on the firewall. The underside is done. As you can see, it's got a light dusting of white paint on it because obviously the cab looked just like this up until about an hour ago. But now, as you can see, it is painted pretty white. So yeah, pretty excited at how that turned out. I mean, obviously I did a rattle can job, so I don't know how long it's going to last. I did the same kind of prepping in there. Cleaned, self-etch primered, seam sealed, cleaned again. I did miss some spots with the seam sealer, so I'm probably going to have to go back at some point in time and put some more seam sealer on some spots that I missed. But, and then obviously there is a little bit of trash in the paint, especially on the floor pans, because obviously I just can't help everything from falling into, my paint, because I'm in a dirty, destroyed garage. I'm not in a paint booth. So, but anyway, I got the front all ready, and I'm going to lay some white paint down on here, and then I have a special thing we're going to do with the firewall here, so you guys will get to see that, I guess, in the next update, and then hopefully by that time we'll be putting it back together. If you follow me on Instagram, you already might know what's going on, but check this out. Bam! Turned out so good. So there's a couple little imperfections I just have to fix that I'm just going to do with the paintbrush. But, I mean, overall, oh my God, it looks so good. It's amazing. I love it. Looks awesome. Super excited. I'm glad I did it, because if I didn't, I would have regretted it. So, cab's back on the truck, obviously. Everything is bolted back on, but not tightened, because I need to get wax nuts for the bottom of these, or they are literally just going to vibrate off. So, yeah. The next thing I'm going to do is actually go ahead and get some of this stuff put back on. I actually took all this stuff off after I took the motor out. So I'm going to go ahead and put most of this stuff over here back on, and then we'll get the torque converter back on the flex plate and go from there. The next thing we got to do is replace the transmission pan, because the old one had a hole in it from the junkyard, and I just went ahead and got the old one off, and it looks really nice. The inside is very clean. There's not a lot of sludge. I don't know if that like happens in transmissions, but I mean, it looks really good. The fluid's a little dark, the fluid that's left in there, but it's not terrible. The old pan has a little bit, so this thing right here is a magnet, and it's got a little bit of stuff on it, but it's really not bad for how many miles are probably on this transmission. So, you know, that worked out really good. The new pan didn't come with this magnet, but I have a feeling that this is a magnet, possibly. So I'm not too worried about that, but there's the new pan. It's got the same thing in it. Let's see. No, it's not a magnet. So I don't know, maybe we'll get another magnet to put in there. But what I did notice was when I took this out, the filter here, so I was originally planning on just using the old gasket because I forgot to get a new gasket. But what I found out was when I took this apart is this filter got cracked. I'm assuming from, I don't know. This pan is dented. That's what it was. So the pan is dented. It cracked this filter up. You can see it's cracked right there, and then this piece was missing. I did find a big chunk of this in the transmission fluid there. There's still a little piece somewhere. It could be in the filter, or you know, I don't know where this other little piece is, but I checked all the crevices and stuff in the transmission and I can't seem to find it. So if it's still in there, hopefully it ends up in the pan. But I didn't get a new filter either, so obviously these are things I probably should have got. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and try to find a gasket and a filter for a 4L80E transmission. And so luckily I was able to get a new filter and gasket. So hopefully this gasket's not the hard GM original equipment one, but it's what I could get right now, so hopefully it'll work. I got everything cleaned up. I'm going to go ahead and put the new filter in, put the gasket on, put the pan on, flip this thing over and try to get it onto the back onto the engine. So yeah, we'll see how that goes by myself. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it or not, because that thing is heavy. All right, well, that's about everything back on the firewall. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and pull the motor out here to the open area and get the transmission off and get the torque converter in. Alright guys, so if you can't tell, apparently putting the torque converter on the flywheel is not the way to do it. In my 15, 17 years of working on cars, I've never had automatic. Every single one of my cars is a manual. If this was a clutch and a flywheel, it'd be done already. But, yeah, it's not. So, I gotta take the torque converter off and put it on the transmission first, then mate them, and go from there, which makes more sense in hindsight. So, learn from my mistakes. Well, guys, it has been a long 2 days. I've been working on this truck straight. I was here till 9:30 last night. It's about, I started at 9 o'clock this morning. It's about, I don't know, 7 now or something like that. So, just been working like crazy. I haven't really been filming a whole lot, but I'm basically to the point. Pretty much everything is wrapped up. I did have to kind of ghetto rig a couple things. So we got this line here just for right now. That line is definitely kinked, but I'm probably going to have to order the swivel thermostat housing. This hose is just barely on here, but hopefully it'll work out. I mean, I'm just going to put water in it, so you know, it's probably not the end of the world. All the wiring is hooked back up. All the coil packs are hooked up. Everything is good to go. So basically where I'm at right now is I'm going to start it again. And also the brakes are bled, so the brakes should be working 100%. Trans fluid is in, but it only took about 5 quarts. There was some fluid in the torque converter already, obviously, but the transmission and the lines and the cooler are basically dry, so it probably should have took more fluid than that. But I'm guessing I just need to get the pump going and get some of the fluid back up into the torque converter and also into the lines and the cooler. So we're going to go ahead and monitor that as we start it. Diff fluid is in. It's actually jacked up. All 4 wheels are off the ground right now, so what we can do is we're going to start it. We're going to start adding some water and hopefully let it get up to operating temperature with no leaks, because I've never put coolant in it before. And if it does, then we'll throw it into gear, see if the wheels turn, see if the brakes work, blah, blah, blah. I have some other stuff to do while we're kind of waiting for that. I still got to get the body 100% bolted down. I got the nylon bolts to put on the bottom end of that. And same thing with the bed. I got to put the bolts in the bed. And we still got to just secure the fuel tank and some other stuff in the bed. So I'm going to be doing that while we're waiting for the truck to hopefully get to operating temperature and kind of bleed and stuff like that. So, you know, let's get to it and just see what happens, I guess. 15 degrees. Whew. All right, well, obviously we had a little incident. When I was revving it a little bit to see if the transmission was working, coolant was coming out of the radiator pretty furiously. Coolant temperature was reading 215 right there. Obviously I don't have a fan and there was no airflow, so you know, I'm not too unexpected of that, but why it was pushing so much coolant so fast, I guess could be because of temperature, or you know, we might have one of the head gaskets might not have seated or something. This is the first time I put water in it, so you know, it is what it is. All right guys, so we're gonna go with attempt 2. This time what I did was I just topped off the radiator and just put the cap on. So we'll see what happens with the temperatures. I hooked the fan up this time. It's not hooked up to the relay, but I do got it running. And I also hooked up the alternator so we can see if that works. The temps are at about 160, obviously, because we let it cool down. I got the fan running, so we'll see what they get up to. I believe the alternator's working because now the battery is showing 13.7 volts. It was at like 11. So I think the alternator's working, but we'll monitor that too. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get brave, and I'm going to go ahead and try to move it like a foot and see what happens. So it moved. I had to give it a lot of RPM, so we're probably just low on transmission fluid like I anticipated. So I'm gonna go ahead and somehow try to check that maybe, and also simultaneously monitor the cooling and the alternator. So yeah, this will probably be a time lapse or cutout, I don't know, but all right, so the temps got up to about 206. So I shut it off. I figured I'd let it cool down before you know, it explodes again. So, you know, it's obviously a little hot, but I'm not too surprised because, like I said, we're not moving. I only have a 12-inch fan on that big radiator right now, so we might have to go ahead and get, as much as I don't want to put one on the front, we might have to put one on the front because there's no room to put one on the back on the other side. But, hey, monumental moment. The truck moved under its own power for the first time since I have ever owned it. No leaks, which is a plus, aside from our water mishap. Everything else seems good. So the only thing we got to figure out is the transmission, which again, it's working. It takes a lot of RPM to get the truck to move. So I'm thinking it's just low on fluid still. Like I said, I only put 5 quarts in it earlier. Even a drain and fill should have been about 7. So, but I'm guessing that it's low. So I'm gonna see right now if it'll take some more fluid, and then what else? Garage, our issue is just the temps. So everything else seems to be working great. So I'm gonna go ahead and let it cool down. But that's probably gonna be it for this video because it is Monday evening. I usually put out videos on Tuesdays and I really don't wanna miss another week. So yeah, the truck moved under its own power. That's awesome. Hopefully next video we'll get to take it for a test drive. Everything's working great. The brakes are working awesome too. I mean, I only stopped from 2 miles an hour, but I barely had to push the pedal. So, you know, I think we're all good there, and everything's awesome. And I hope you guys love how the firewall turned out because I think it looks amazing too. So, you know, I'll see you guys next time. If you like the video, like, share, comment, subscribe, and see ya.